Welcome to another episode of the Collision Vision driven by Auto Body News. As always, I'm your host, Cole Strandberg. Today's episode is a special one. As some of you know, my dad is kind of a legend in the collision repair industry, being involved in the periphery of the industry since 1988, where he founded FilterWorks USA, a company that eventually became one of the largest paint booth, frame and welding, and wheel and tire equipment distributors in the country. Gregg Strandberg is his name, and he's currently the chairman of the board within that very same company, now called Autotality. Today, he and I are going to talk all things related to shop buildouts. So whether you're looking to Brownfield or Greenfield new locations, looking to increase productivity in your existing footprint, or just want to hear some fun family banter about the family business, be sure to give this episode a listen. Enjoy the show. Gregg Strandberg, or should I say Dad, thanks for joining us on the Collision Vision.
Happy to be here.
Looking forward to a fun conversation. We're going to hit a lot, but before we do, walk through your background. Who are you? I gave a brief introduction at the top of the show, but how'd you get your start in the industry?
Okay, yeah, thanks for asking. And what guest number am I about? I was kind of wondering when you were going to get to me.
Hey, you're still in the first year, so we're good.
Okay. You picked all the ripe fruit. Now you're getting up the tree a little bit. So had a small air conditioning filter service company, and about a year and a half in, it was going kind of slowly, but steadily. And a fellow walked through my door named Corey Rome, specialty filter. He was an expert in paint booth filtration. He introduced us to paint booths. Suggested that we sell a particular paint booth filter that he was handling. Gave me a little demonstration kit on how to sell these filters. And because I was a little bored selling AC filter service, I decided to take that and run to some collision centers and see what would happen. I was very pleased with the reception I got at these collision centers. The individually, locally owned and operated collision centers would just welcome you as a salesman, which I was not used to. And it was a nice transition for me. And about the same time, European heated downdraft technology was just entering this country. And I encountered a couple of collision centers who had made purchases of heated downdraft equipment. We're just having a very difficult time getting them installed. The fine print of their contract left all the important things to them, pits and permits and fire suppression systems and electrical work, and recognized an opportunity there. Clearly, the shop owner needed some assistance in getting this unit handled. It was taking years, a year or two to get this installation handled. So just recognized an opportunity there, got familiar with the collision repair business through paint booth industry. And that's the direction our business naturally took just because there was a huge need there.
Awesome. Paint booths into frame and welding and measuring into eventually wheel and tire and service departments. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I've mentioned multiple times, and you've gotten some shout outs here on the Collision Vision so far, specifically from Robert Molina of Collision Care Express. Great guy. And I mentioned kind of throughout that I grew up in the periphery of the collision repair industry. And for people outside of the industry, the word paint booth or frame machine just never really resonated. So always used to joke in high school or whatever that I would explain what I did at a party or something, and their eyes would kind of gloss over at the 10-second mark, and at the end they'd be like, "So you paint cars?" I'd be like, "Yeah, pretty much." a little bit far from the truth. But fast forwarding a bit, you grew FilterWorks to being a substantial regional player, one of, if not the best in the country, if I do say so myself. And then you went the private equity route. Private equity is something we talk a ton about in the lens of collision repair. Just real quick, what was that like, that process?
In my particular case, it was a great process. We fortunately partnered with two great guys, KT Capital Partners, and just men of their word, men of high integrity, and it was a great experience throughout. As someone who started a business and had some difficult times, growth becomes a little daunting at times. I think there are opportunities in your career to take big steps forward, and often those come with the risks. And in some cases, risks that I just was not willing to take. When you partner with private equity, they're very sophisticated in how they grow a business, and it's been fun to watch the process. It's been a real learning experience for me. Not totally different. I mean, a lot of the business fundamentals are the same, but they introduce resources and ways of growth that really were not considerations to me. Partnering with, I didn't have a bank relationship. We didn't have a line of credit, so we were very restricted in our growth due to cash. We had to watch cash all the time. These guys are not afraid to take on some debt. They develop banking relationships that allow them to invest in the business and grow it much more rapidly. And that has been probably the number one lesson for me. But I think partnering with the right team and having a firm understanding of how it's going to go and accepting that. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have a hard time with that transition because it is so different. But I kind of appreciated their level of knowledge and business acumen. And I just sat back and learned from it, helped where I could. And it couldn't have been a more positive experience in my book. I've really enjoyed the process.
You nailed it. I talk all the time about the private equity sale process being kind of like dating. And we dated some. I was with the company for about 3 years before it sold. The partnership was so good, I stayed on for about 3 years afterward. You spent 3 years or so as CEO before converting to chairman. Shows the relationship there was good, and that's such an important part of the whole process. Another important piece that you touched on there was just kind of the difference in managing expectations of what the new life is going to be. Private equity does make changes. It's part of what they do. It's a good thing. They're here to take it to the next level. For me, and I'm sure even more so for you in the driver's seat, just such an interesting evolution from the family business, kind of conservatively run, financially speaking, of course, to private equity where, hey, we're loading on debt, we're making acquisitions, we're in full-blown growth mode. Just such a cool thing, and you navigated it beautifully. Kind of zooming out, you've been in the industry since about 1988. A lot's changed, obviously, and from your seat and from knowing all these great operators for many, many years, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the industry?
Yeah, that's a great question, too. And automotive technology keeps evolving, and it demands change. Change or die. It's certainly the case in this industry, and it's been so much fun for me to see the professionals who have succeeded in this space and in getting to know them and developing relationships and rapport with them. Just numerous professionals have enjoyed that process so much. And in the early days, it was locally owned and operated, otherwise known as mom and pop shops, and just developed some wonderful relationships there. And a lot of those people have now gone through the same transition we did. They've been acquired, whether it's by a private equity or by a strategic partner. And we've been with them through that transition and trying to maintain those relationships to continue offering our goods and services to these new customers, in some cases in similar or the same facilities. And so that's one of the major I think changes we've seen is just that, going from mom and pop to more of fewer, bigger shops, really focused on maximizing throughput, productivity, and that played well into our business model and how we go to market, as far as focusing on the most efficient facility we can design for them. Equipment price becomes less of an issue then too. If you can deliver a high level of service and you can do it quickly, it's more important to them. And that has been a real benefit to us, and it's really helped in our growth. But seeing that transition, shops becoming much more sophisticated, focused on results and efficiencies has been wonderful.
Huge evolution. And it's a great segue into the fact that, as Robert Molina highlighted, you and the FilterWorks / Autotality team was involved in the creation of his first facility, which has boomed, obviously. You've worked in a similar capacity with a ton of mom and pops, with a ton of regional MSOs, with a ton of national consolidators on brownfielding, greenfielding, layout and design. Let's dive into that a little bit. I think at the end of the day, you've been involved in hundreds, if not thousands, of shops. At a very high level, what are some things that shop owners should keep in mind when they're designing their facility, and assuming they have the benefit of starting from scratch?
You really like that question. I think it's back to kind of how our business developed and evolved in looking for ways to differentiate our product offering and service offering. We really started focusing less on equipment and more on shop service, helping with layout and design, making sure that we not just deliver the correct equipment, but put it in the right place. So in Robert's case, he had a beautiful building, very, very unique though, and a lot of challenges. There were a lot of walls, not natural flow. So when walking into that building originally, I was searching for how to work with it. I found it very difficult because it was very compartmentalized. I took a lot of time and measured that facility and developed some drawings, and then started focusing on how to get the best throughput out of this building, out of this facility. Very difficult to do in that case, but we managed. But it did start with the drawing. It started with the foundation, and that's something that we started a number of years ago that's been a huge differentiator for us. So I can see my client on a subsequent visit to the initial visit and have full-size blueprints giving him some suggestions as far as workshop flow, equipment layout, and it just had a tremendous effect on the results. And that's what we're focused on more than anything. Quality equipment is key. You want to make sure you're repping quality products, but you want to take it another step further in our case. And his was a brownfield. So some of the things we look for, ceiling height is very important. Electrical availability, because it can be very costly if they have to do a service upgrade, and we want to make sure they have access to three-phase service as well. We want to look at general building dimensions, as we discussed prior. We want to see if there's natural gas available too, because it is nice if it's there. Paint booths have big burners, up to 1.5 million BTU burners. You want to make sure you have a good gas source. If you don't have natural gas, you can run them off propane. That can cause some challenges too, though. How to locate tanks, because these tanks have to be pretty big to support a burner like that. We also want to check zoning. We've seen issues where people have signed leases for buildings that were not zoned properly. That's obviously an enormous issue and very difficult to overcome. Sometimes you can't overcome it. So that's something you want to take a look at too. Those are the primary things we look at when considering a brownfield. Greenfields are, and one other huge thing in both Greenfield and Brownfield applications is parking. You want to make sure you have good parking, room for plenty of vehicles to support the volume that you're looking to do. That's a big one as well.
Oh yeah. In our geography more than others as well, down here in South Florida and definitely front of mind, whereas you get out a little bit and maybe a little bit less hard to come by, but great points.
Absolutely. And it really is, in the case of a brownfield, I think it's worth investing in an architect or maybe consult with your paint supplier about some layout and design help. We did that for many of our big customers and all of our customers is we'd go take a look at a building, get some rough notes to see if we could make it flow prior to them leasing or purchasing a building. I think it's well worth. You might have to pay for that service, but it's worth it. You want to do this once and do it right.
Yep. Shout out Mom, by the way, who was the lead designer on the team for many, many years. Love all of that. Very helpful. And for my next question, I think I'm going to reword it. I was going to ask about some pitfalls, and we've kind of nailed that on greenfielding and brownfielding. I think the value of greenfielding and brownfielding, if you're a shop or an MSO, is pretty clear. You can get into a shop and fill it up and design it how you want without having to buy another location. Why aren't more groups doing that? Where are the challenges there? Is it a pain to greenfield and brownfield?
It takes time in both cases. In greenfield, it certainly takes time. Starting with the zoning process and then building and construction can take quite a bit of time. If you can enter an existing collision center, there are huge advantages there too. And I know they like the fact that they've got seasoned veteran technicians there as well in many cases. But sometimes you just have to do it, and there might not be a great option there as far as a collision center to purchase. So at that point in time, you're looking at greenfield or greenfielding or brownfielding. And brownfielding in a properly zoned building that does meet the criteria can be pretty efficient. I mean, you can be up and running in fairly short order. I mean, I think comfortably within 6 months, maybe even more quickly than that.
Awesome. Makes total sense. And a lot of the national MSOs at this point, they're all still focused on acquisitions, but some to a degree have shifted that focus to brownfielding and greenfielding. Why do you think that is? I guess we kind of discussed it in terms of maybe a lack of inventory in certain markets, but should regional players and local players consider following suit?
Yeah, I think so. If someone's looking to grow and do it efficiently, I think each individual market has to be looked at that way individually and see what's available there. There's some areas are just full of wonderful brownfield opportunities. Others are not. There's a lot of land that you can buy that's going to allow for the parking that we discussed that's required and the amount of square footage that you need to. And there might not be great options as far as collision centers established in that particular area. So I think when you're a regional looking to expand or a national MSO looking to expand, I think you look at all those factors first. And I think in some cases, offers are probably made on existing collision centers and they just can't come to terms. But the regional player knows he wants to be in that market. He's going to find a way to get in there. And a brownfield might be a great way to do that, or a greenfield, which we're seeing more and more of that now.
Yeah. It's fun because we've had a lot of MSO operators here on the Collision Vision, and the bulk, it seems, their growth focus is acquisitions more than anything. And there's a healthy mix of those in the middle who are opportunistic. There was one, maybe two, that was, hey, we don't want to mess with acquisitions and trying to convert cultures. We want to build everything from scratch. It's cleaner. And I thought that was a very cool way of looking at it and an achievable goal in many, many markets to be able to execute on that. Shifting gears a little bit, something that we've talked to here on the Collision Vision a fair bit with a variety of guests is the family business dynamic. Talk about that, because I've mentioned here that I've worked with you, my mom, my now wife, all together in the same office for many years, setting you up to knock me down here if you wanted to. Could be quite funny, but generally, talk about family business in your mind.
Right, and that takes on all different types of dynamics. I mean, there are inherently some challenges. I think it depends a lot on the personalities. I think a number of people know that it's just not going to be a fit for them. Yep. And I think if that's your gut feeling, don't do it. It would not be a good idea, because the challenges are there in the best of circumstances. And I'd have to say that ours were those. I think they were the best of circumstances. People who are understanding, people who are flexible in their way of thinking, and smart and driven. And I was just very, very pleased to have all you guys on the team. Nancy, my wife, your mom, joined more than 20 years ago and just became, like you said earlier, just an expert in layout design. One of the foremost experts in layout design in collision repair and now service department equipment too. Belle just was an enormous asset. Your wife did a beautiful job for us. Just a smart person, hardworking, and just really appreciated having her, and then having you with the family business was a blessing to me, something I had always looked forward to, and just love that we had that opportunity to work together at that level in that capacity. And it was so much fun having my long-term customers tell me what a great job you did for them. And you continue to work with some of them in some capacity and maintain relationships with them. But it's very heartwarming as a father to hear all these compliments about your son. Just dream come true for me, and I loved every minute of it, and I miss that. I mean, that's one of the things that I miss most about the transition to private equity and the KT Partner capital guys, and so we missed that part of it. But it was great. But I think your gut feeling and the general personality of the people involved is something that needs to be evaluated. I mean, if you've got a lot of strong personalities, and we all do, but we knew that we could make it work, and it was worth it to us to make it work. But I think some personalities are just not conducive to that type of business relationship, having the deep personal relationship and then working together in a business capacity day in and day out. I've known a number of people who have been exceptionally challenged by it, and it's caused real issues.
Oh yeah.
That can be lengthy and leave scars. So really do have to evaluate yourself and the general dynamics and kind of what the goals are too. And I feel that we're very lucky. But a great question, and it's fun to talk about. And we still have a great time when we're out or at one another's homes talking about some of the things that we've dealt with together in the past. Great memories that I'll cherish.
Well, I'll tell you what, I am thrilled and relieved with that answer, because when I do a show, I typically share an outline with some really high level bullet points and make sure there are no gotcha questions. But that was sort of a gotcha question. And I set you up to be like, oh, your mom was great. Your wife was great. Working with you was a pain. So thank you for the kind words. It was a blast. Absolutely a great time. I think our family was uniquely suited to nail it. And I've met with some other families here on the show that have felt the same way. And likewise, too, it was fun going out in the field and meeting with people that you'd known for many, many years and hearing how great you were and how great my mom is. All that stuff was very, very cool. The stars aligned, I think, for a great family business experience within our group. Zooming out a little bit, kind of one last time before we start to wrap things up and get into the takeaways and all that stuff. Is there anything we haven't discussed today that we should before we part ways?
Yeah, I love the customer base that you're serving. Just the collision repair industry is made up of just a bunch of very successful, bright, hardworking individuals, and I feel privileged to have met so many of them. I'd like to offer a couple of things. One, I think it's in purchasing equipment, I think you want to be very, very careful in your evaluation. One thing that we learned early on that we learned kind of the hard way. We lost a ton of business in the early days because our prices were more expensive. And I started dissecting my quotes, and I gave the dissected quote version in paper to my prospective clients. I wanted them to see that it's just not a number on the bottom of the page, that there's a lot involved, or permit fees included. Because on a paint booth, in the case of a paint booth, you don't know how much the permit fees are going to be until the project is close to being done. So we put an allowance in there for that. I included fire suppression systems and again, the permit fees and permit processing fees. And in many cases, I had an electrician provide a complete quotation and included that in the quote as well. And then roof penetrations can get costly. And in the case of the Florida market, wind tie downs. In many cases, in equipment proposals, they're brief. There's a number at the bottom, and there's very little detail as far as what's included. Be careful there. Take a good hard look at the quote.
Gray area is a nightmare. And that was always something that I appreciated is, hey, we're breaking it down line by line. Absolutely.
Exactly right. Yeah. And then also, typically, if you're buying a paint booth, a frame machine measuring system, you're buying it once. This equipment lasts a long time. Buy the piece of equipment that's going to suit you the best. It's going to serve you and your technicians day in and day out, reliable. And then another very important factor too is making sure parts are available, service support is available. I think that's absolutely key when evaluating equipment for collision repair, because you can't deliver our customers, the collision centers, cannot deliver vehicles unless their paint booth is working, their frame equipment's working, their measuring systems are working, welding equipment, compressors too. Buy the right piece of equipment and keep it serviced. It'll serve you well and help your bottom line for years to come.
Yeah, the ROI is very clear, right? Many of the biggest and most sophisticated operators have a dollar amount that each piece of equipment is worth to them per day. And if nothing else, it's a testament to it's worth it to ensure it stays up and running at almost any cost.
Very well put. Yeah, one of our customers in particular, I think the number was $13,000 a day was the value they placed on a paint booth, and that adds up very quickly. So keep it healthy. Keep it operating at full capacity, and it's safety equipment too. So make sure your technicians are safe in the use of that equipment as well.
Awesome. Very good. Well, as you know, we like to start to wrap up each episode of the Collision Vision with 3 key takeaways. What do you have for us today?
I think deciding on your business strategy. What is your focus as a collision center? Is it high-end European vehicles? Is it big vehicles, trucks? Are you serving the insurance industry primarily? Decide what that is and be the best in that space. I've always believed in that, and the collision centers that we've seen that have been the most successful are very much focused. They know the parameters in which they want to work, and they execute within those parameters beautifully. It's been fun to watch the level of success some of these guys have been able to achieve. We believe in delivering a high level of service, make service exceptional. There's a book that was introduced to me called Unreasonable Hospitality. That's what you're after. You want You want to deliver such a level of impactful service that they don't ever think about going anywhere else, and they recommend only you. And you've got a real opportunity. Our collision center partners have a real opportunity in this space because a vehicle is so important to the owner. It needs to be repaired for looks and certainly for safety and structural integrity, and do it once, do it right. And during the process, make sure the customer knows what's going on and take good care of those guys. And they'll come back and they'll tell friends about you too, but find a way to deliver a very high level of service. We did it in our space by becoming general contractors, pulling permits for our customers, simplifying the process as much as we possibly could for the collision centers. And then one thing that's really been outstanding for me to understand and learn more about is how to build a culture. I was involved with a group called Vistage, and Vistage is a great opportunity for individual business owners to have, essentially having a board of directors that are peers, that are in other industries, but with similar concerns and issues and challenges. And our Vistage chair was a gentleman named Harvey Gelman, that may he rest in peace. Harvey passed, but what a great influence he had on me and in my business, and helped us achieve great levels of success. Just with his knowledge and experience. And he looked at my business in such a way that I never would. I was in it every day. He was looking at the business from the outside and gave me some great suggestions and ideas, and really helped us grow our business. And during my experience in time in working with Vistage, they had a speaker come in and talk about culture. And when we started to focus on culture, it was never a strength of mine, but as we focused on it, we became better about it. And anybody can pay an employee, but you want them to be part of a winning team. And you create a culture like that within your business, there's no telling what you can achieve. And we've seen some of our customers do an exceptional job with that, and their collision centers just absolutely succeed at unimaginable levels in some cases. Just very, very efficient, well-oiled machines.
Talk about an industry that has traditionally been very challenging to do that. And a lot of blue collar businesses and business owners kind of write that off. Like, oh, it's really tough to build a culture among insert industry. And
great point.
In collision, we're seeing that, hey, it is doable, it is possible, and it is extremely important. Where can people check out Autotality or get in touch with you?
Autotality.com, or feel free to give me a ring on the cell phone at 954-931-1985. But Autotality.com gives a good idea of what our service capabilities and service offerings include. So please feel free to visit our website.
Awesome. And don't go calling him at night or on weekends when we're out. I don't want to be dealing with him taking phone calls left and right. But Gregg Strandberg, Dad, thank you for joining us here. A lot of fun, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Me too. Thanks so much.
Thanks again to Gregg Strandberg, a.k.a. my dad, for coming on today's show. What a fun time it was working with him and the rest of the family, and what a fun conversation this one was today. The guy's an icon and has probably sold more collision repair equipment than anyone out there, so do feel free to reach out if you have any equipment or layout questions for your shop. Before we wrap up, I wanted to reiterate Gregg's 3 key takeaways, and those were, number 1, decide on your business's strategy. You're not going to be everything to everyone, so decide where you want to put your focus and double down. You want to be a high production DRP shop? Do it. Want to focus on EVs or specialty European vehicles? Go for it. Whatever you want to do, be the best at it and make that your focus. Number 2, make your service exceptional. He dropped a book rec for a book called Unreasonable Hospitality, and I'll go ahead and drop a link to that book in the show notes. But deliver a level of impactful service where customers never even think about going elsewhere, or certainly don't even think about recommending anyone else. Find any way to deliver the highest possible level of service and quality for your customers. And lastly, onto the employee side, focus on culture. Culture can be challenging, but the first step of building a great culture is deciding you want to. Join a peer group, learn all you can about ensuring you are the employer of choice within your field and your market, and focus on your employees. That's all for today's show. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share the Collision Vision wherever you enjoy your podcast. And on behalf of the Auto Body News team and myself, thank you for coming along for the ride.